family and to make a difference. That's what we're all about as a church in a nutshell. So again, thanks for coming. We're doing a series where we're looking at the parables of Jesus. And if you don't know what a parable is, it's okay. We're going to explain it. But we said a few weeks ago that the New Testament of the Bible has New and Old Testament. In the New Testament, one of the Gospels, there's 4 accounts of the life of Jesus called the Gospels. And in one of them, Mark, who is the author, Mark says that Jesus literally never preached or taught without using parables. Parables were around during the time of Jesus, but he's the one that really made them famous. He really put it on the map, so to speak. And a parable is simply a story with a spiritual truth or principle, but that's really based on real life. All the parables that Jesus gives, there's about 43 or so of them that we have of the life of Jesus. And almost all of them, Jesus tells you, here's what the parable means. Here's the point. And what he's doing is taking a deep, or maybe we might say even complicated spiritual truth of what it means to be part of God's family, part of God's kingdom. And he breaks it down so that a 10-year-old could understand it. So parables are not anything like what we have where, you have talking animals, or they're not fables or anything like that. These are things that are based in real life that everyone could be like, yeah, I can relate to that. I have someone that I know like that, or I've experienced that myself, but they have a spiritual point. Last week, one of the parables that we looked at, we said, kind of kicked off the final week of Jesus' life before his death and resurrection. That Jesus, we just celebrated Easter not that long ago. And if Jesus died on Friday, what we celebrate, rose again on Sunday, then this probably took place Monday or Tuesday of the week before the cross. And the disciples asked Jesus one question with 2 parts, and Jesus just kind of goes on and on and on and on, answering it. And they asked this question, what will it be like when you return? And what do we do in the meantime? How will we know what to look for? And Jesus answers that. He says, when I return, this is what to look for. The sun will go out, the moon will go out, all those cosmological things, and we'll talk about that at some other point. So he answers that question, but then he says, but in the meantime, don't become so obsessed with that. You need to know it. You need to be aware of it, but don't be obsessed with it. Instead, what we said last week, the parable Jesus gave, is you need to use the talent that I gave you in the meantime to serve other people. And so that was the message last week. That was the parable. That God has given each of us a gift, and it is our spiritual job and obligation and duty by God to use that gift to serve other people. So he says, while you're waiting for the return of Jesus, we don't just come on Sundays and sit in a nice warm seat and go home. No, while we're waiting for the return of Jesus, we're actively serving and using the gift that God gave us to serve other people. And now there's another part of that. While we're waiting for the return of Jesus, we need to pray. And so the parable today is all about prayer. And let's look at it together in Luke, in the New Testament, 3rd book of the New Testament. Luke was a medical doctor and an early follower of Jesus. Luke chapter 18, verse 1. One day, Jesus told his disciples a story or parable to show that they should always pray and never give up. There was a judge in a certain city, he said, who neither feared God nor cared about people. A widow of that city came to him repeatedly saying, give me justice in this dispute with my enemy. The judge ignored her for a while, but finally he said to himself, I don't fear God or care about people, but this woman is driving me crazy. I'm going to see that she gets justice because she is wearing me out with her constant requests. Then the Lord said, learn a lesson from this unjust judge. Even he rendered a just decision in the end. So don't you think God will surely give justice to his chosen people who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will grant justice to them quickly. But when the Son of Man returns, how many will he find on the earth who have faith? This is a really powerful parable story that Jesus gives of the illustration of prayer and the persistence of prayer. And if we're going to summarize the parable, again, anytime you read the Bible, read it a couple of times, whether it's one verse or a whole chapter or a couple paragraphs, and stop and ask, what is this really saying? What is the main idea that the author's trying to communicate? So here Jesus gives it to us, and to break it down, make it really simple, what's the whole point of the parable? Is pray persistently. That's the big thought. That's the big idea, that we pray persistently. I mean, verse 1 tells you what you should do. It's the main point of the parable. Jesus said one day he told his disciples a story to show that they should always pray and never give up. Now, as we always do, let's break that down kind of thought by thought. Always pray. What does that mean? Because he could have just said, Jesus gave a story that they should pray. But it's interesting that Jesus says that you should always pray, and if that's not enough, to never give up. It's a double emphasis. What does it mean to always pray? Well, first, I think we got to back up and say, well, what is prayer, and how do I pray? Because, again, maybe you're here and you're like, I don't know how to pray, Brian. I've never really done it before. I've seen my grandma do it. I see you other Christians do it. I've never done it. I'm uncomfortable. It's weird. I don't even know how to pray. And so I want to give you just very quickly what prayer is. Honestly, this it's so simple. Prayer is talking to God like you're talking to a close friend. That's prayer in its most simplistic form. I mean, again, a 10-year-old could do that, right? So if a 10-year-old could do it, an adult can do it. You talk to God, your creator, your Father in heaven, like you talk to a close friend. That's prayer. I mean, we could go on and on, but we would return to that. It's simple. Now, let me tell you what that is not, though. I think it's important just to, as many times, to look at what something is not so you understand what it is. So when I say talk to God like you're talking to a close friend, what I am not saying is, this is not prayer. Daddy God, would you please? No. He's not Daddy God, all right? There is a reverence to him. He is holy. He is God. He is eternal. He is the creator of all things. So he's not Daddy God or Papa G upstairs. Like that's another thing. Don't be like, hey, what up, big man? How you doing? You know, I mean, he's not your homie that you hang out with and eat enchiladas on Friday nights, okay? God is not your pal, your buddy. He is God. So we don't reference him that way. It's one thing to reference him in awe and respect as Father, but not in this, hey, we're friends hanging out all the time. And then we should do it daily, prayer, and throughout the day. Do this daily throughout the day. Prayer, with your spouse or significant other, you don't just talk to them for 10 minutes of a morning and be like, all right, see you tomorrow morning. Your relationship will not last, right? But what you do is you talk to them for more than just 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of a morning. You talk to them throughout the day, whether it's text message, phone call, face-to-face. Hopefully it's more face-to-face than anything else, because you're building that relationship. That's what prayer is. Prayer is not, I checked the box. I spent 30 minutes this morning. I read my Bible for 15 minutes. My alarm went off, and now I pray for 15 minutes. No. That's not prayer. I mean, that's fine, but don't think that it stops there. Because what you do is you leave God in your little prayer area of a morning. Instead, take God with you to work. Take him with you in the car when you're dropping the kids off. Take him with you throughout your day. Take him with you when you're taking the kids to practice and when you're coming home from work. Take him with you. How? Through prayer. You communicate to him just like you would a friend throughout the day. That's prayer. So Jesus said we should always pray. And now look at the next part. And we should never give up in our prayers. Never give up in our prayers. Again, here's what this doesn't mean. Mindless repetition. And elsewhere, when Jesus teaches on prayer, he teaches on prayer a lot. That's when he explicitly says that. Don't pray like other people with mindless repetition. So you're not saying, God, would you please do this? God, would you please do this? God, would you please do this? And the same thing over and over and over on a loop. No, that's weird. Don't do that with God. It's not mindless repetition. In fact, there's a great book called Reaching God's Ear by Samuel Storms. And there's a couple things that he has. And again, this is not new to me. It's him. And it's a great statement. He says, do we repeat our prayers because we think that the quality of a prayer is dependent on the quantity of our words? Do we repeat our prayers because we think that God is ignorant and needs to be informed, or if not ignorant, at least he is unconcerned and therefore needs to be awakened? Do we repeat our prayers because we believe that God is unwilling to answer and we must prevail upon him, somehow transforming a hard-hearted God into a compassionate and loving one? Do we repeat our prayers because we think that God will be swayed in his decision by our putting on a show of zeal and piety? I mean, the idea is, why would you just do this mindless repetition time after time after time? I mean, do you have a view of God that he's ignorant to your need and you have to keep bugging him like a little toddler tugging at your pants? No. Do you have a view of God that he's mean and cold-hearted and that if you just, prevail upon him by request after request, then maybe he'll change his mind? Or maybe you keep asking your need to God because you think that the longer I talk to God, I'll wear him out and he'll be like, just be quiet already, I'll give you what you want, kind of like the unjust judge. I mean, really, the way you pray, I think, is very reflective of your view of God. In other words, your prayer life is directly related, I think, to your view of God, your theology, as it were. And if you think, I just gotta beg him, I gotta hound him, I gotta nag him, well, then you have a really twisted, I think, unbiblical view of God. But if you view him as your Father, who you can go to at any time, who loves you and has compassion towards you, that should radically change and elevate your prayer life. Listen, here's what continual prayer and never ceasing, here's what it does mean. That you keep your request continually before God, believing by faith that he will answer. Continual prayer without stopping means that I am continuing to bring my request before God and I'm not going to stop. I'm not mindless repeating the prayer. I'm not just saying the same words over and over and over like a robot, but I'm continually putting it before God. I have had family members who don't know Jesus, and I've prayed over them for literally over 20 years. 20 years. Every day for 20 years I prayed for them. Not using the same mindless words, but stirring my heart, saying, God, I believe, would you open their eyes? And I would pray over and over and over 20 years. And in 1 year, 2 of them gave their life to Jesus in 1 year. In 1 year. It's amazing. Yeah, that's a good thing. You clap for that. That's good. But 20 years, and it wasn't me, it was other people praying as well. 20 years. What if we would have given up on year 5? Would they have their relationship with Jesus today? I don't know. There could be people who are eternally, I think in many ways, dependent on your prayer life to continue to pray. I mean, pray without stopping. I got other family members I'm still praying about. We're going on year 30, but I'm still praying for them. And I will pray until they give their life to Jesus or I die, whichever comes first. I'm going to pray without, why? Because it matters, because it's worth it. It's important. Pray without stopping. Listen, if God has not clearly said no or yes to you in your prayer, then he wants you to keep praying until he does. I mean, this is just a pastoral teaching moment. Maybe write that down. If God has not clearly told you yes or no in your prayer, then he wants you to keep praying until he does. If God has clearly told you yes, then the next, okay, God, when is the time? What's the timing that you have? Just because you say yes doesn't mean I got to rush out and do it right now. What's the timing that you have? How should I do it, God? What people do you want me to connect with? There's a whole other litany of prayers. If it's no, it's not, well, would you change your mind, please? Could you rethink about it? Could you go back? If I'm a really good little Christian, maybe I'll no. It's, you said no, I'll move on. There's things in our marriage that my wife and I have prayed about that really aren't super spiritual things, to be honest with you, but we prayed about and just, boy, we would both really like this in our life. We would love this. It's kind of a dream of ours that we've both always had. And we prayed for about 15, 18 years of it. And the last 3 or 4 years, we kept praying, and we just both really felt like the answer is no. And so we just dropped it. Like, okay, God, we are more than content with what you've given us. Thank you. And we move on. Keep praying until you get a clear yes or no from God. Why? Because I think 3 things, and I would encourage you to write these down. The first one, keep praying until I get yes or no from God. Number 1, he is shaping your heart in the meantime. Why do I keep praying until I hear a clear yes or no? I think one of the things is because God is shaping your heart in the meantime. I can't tell you how many times I have had a prayer that is not necessarily that spiritual, just maybe things that I've wanted in my own life, not anything super selfish like, a Porsche 911, nothing like that, but just prayers that I've had, and I'll pray about it over a couple of years, and I'll look up someday as I'm continuing to pray and just think, this is a selfish prayer. I mean, this really benefits no one. It doesn't benefit God's kingdom. It doesn't benefit my family. It would maybe benefit me, but not to a great degree. And how selfish is this? So I get kind of disgusted by it, and I stop praying it. Why? Because God took that time while I was praying that prayer in his grace. And God could say, Brian, I'm so disappointed in you. How pathetic is that prayer? You should know better. You should be more of a mature Christian. You're a pastor. No. But in his grace and his mercy, you'll figure it out on your own. You'll realize you're going to grow spiritually, and you're going to have that light bulb moment of, that's a selfish prayer. So God is shaping your heart to realize, is this a godly prayer, a righteous prayer, as it were, or really a selfish prayer? Which is it? So sometimes that's why that you have a delay, it seems like, in your prayer, that he's shaping your heart in the meantime. Here's another thing. He is building your faith. That's the other part. While you're waiting on God to give a yes or no, he's building up your faith. Because it's in the waiting period that your faith gets strengthened the most. Think about this. If every time you prayed, God said, yes, here you go, or no, that's it, then really, I just don't know that you would have any opportunity for your faith to grow or be stretched, right? Because God would just be almost a machine. But instead, while we're waiting, it stretches us. It builds our faith. It helps us to grow. So I have learned in the waiting seasons, while I'm waiting for yes and no, it could be frustrating. But at the end of the day, God's shaping my heart, but he's also deepening my faith. Because I've had prayer journeys. We started praying for this property before I even knew it was for sale, before I even knew the address or anything. We started praying in 2020 that God would give us a permanent home for Pathway. Prayed it for 3 years before this place opened up and before we remodeled it and moved in. And I can tell you, it would have been great if I would have prayed that prayer and the next day, just boom, here it all is. That would be awesome. But at the end, looking back, I realized I'm actually, in a weird way, I'm thankful that it didn't happen that way, because God grew me so much in those 2 or 3 year period. I matured so much spiritually in those 2 or 3 years that it took to get this place, remodel it, and everything else, that I'm actually thankful for it. You get to a place spiritually where you look back and say, I'm glad you didn't answer right away. I'm glad you took your time, because I needed it. I needed to grow. Here's the third thing, I think, while you're waiting for God to give you yes or no. He is keeping you close. Again, if God said every time you prayed, God, would you do this in my life? Yes, here you go. No. If God did yes or no every time, the moment you prayed, then our relationship with God, I fear, would be shallow at best. He would just be a machine, a means to an end. We wouldn't really love him as Father. But when we're continually praying, he keeps us close. When I'm continually praying about something in my life, something deep, something real, something serious, it keeps me close to him, close to his heart. Because if it was just, hey, yeah, here you go, and move on, well, that relationship would be shallow. But because I have to be persistent in prayer all the time, it helps me to stay close to him. Here's why this matters. Because God answers persistent prayers. Now let's look at the meat of it. That's the precursor. That's the foundation. Look at the meat of the parable, verses 2 through 5. Jesus says, there was a judge in a certain city, he said, who neither feared God nor cared about people. A widow of that city came to him repeatedly saying, God, give me justice in this dispute with my enemy. The judge ignored her for a while, but finally said to himself, I don't fear God or care about people, but this woman is driving me crazy. I'm going to see that she gets justice, because she is wearing me out with her constant requests. One of the things that is unique about Jesus is in his parables, most often he gives two extremes. A few weeks ago, we looked at the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. Two extremes, as extreme opposite as they could get. Most of Jesus' parables are that way. You have it here. You have first this judge, and I think we could call him an unjust judge, which it's an oxymoron, isn't it? When you hear the word judge, even today, even non-biblical, the whole purpose, as a judge, they have one job: to administer justice impartially, right? That's their job, is to administer justice, impartially. And yet to have a judge who says, I don't care about God or people, he's unjust. Jesus is Jewish. He's talking to a Jewish audience. And they would have understood the law, or the Old Testament of the Bible says it has a whole thing about judges and what they're supposed to be like. And the number one requirement for being a good judge is that they fear God. I mean, the best kind of judge is a judge that believes in God, serves God, and has a fear of God in a healthy way. And that's true even of American culture today. And so the number one job is to fear God, and yet this guy doesn't even care about God. You might even say he's atheist. He could care less. And if he doesn't care about God, I mean, that's one thing. That's horrible. That's one thing. But you could at least try to care about people because you're in the people business administering justice to people, and yet you don't even care about people. So it tells me, what does he care about? Think about this. If you don't care about God, and you don't fear him, and you don't really care about people, and you're a judge in the business of administering justice, what is your guiding North Star? What is your moral compass? If it's not the Word of God, if it's not caring about people, I would say quite logically, it's money. He is a crooked judge. He takes bribes. I mean, if you don't care about what God says or what people say, then how are you going to give justice by who can give me the most money? And so it tells me that he only cares not about people or God, but about money. That's the unjust judge. That's one extreme. Now look at the widow. I think on the other extreme, we could say she's a poor widow. She is the lowest of the low in the social class system of the day. Widows in that day, there's no Social Security, no Medicaid, no Medicare. She clearly has no family to advocate for her. She can't afford a lawyer to argue her case. She is completely all alone, destitute widow, begging for her own existence and survival. And this poor little old, we would say maybe decrepit widow, you got this big judge and you got this 4'5" little grandma widow and her cane and everything you picture of this old widow from the Bible looking like. That's what she looked like. And she is coming to him and she recognizes something. This widow is amazing. She recognizes the judge doesn't care about God or people or justice, but he does care about money and bribes. And I don't have that. But what I do have, I'm going to give him. And that is my persistence. She understood, I don't have money or people, but I do have persistence. And I'm going to prevail upon my persistence to get justice in my life. In fact, at the end, when the judge says, I don't fear God or care about people, verse 5, but this woman is driving me crazy. I'm going to see that she gets justice because she is wearing me out with her constant requests. The New Testament was written in Greek, and that phrase in Greek, she's wearing me out with her constant requests, would be translated more accurately in English, she is giving me a black eye. The imagery here, it's a boxing term. The imagery is fascinating, and I wish we could translate it better in English. But think of the biggest, burliest, buff, ripped, jacked boxer you can think of, and then think of little old grandma, and think of, the guy's like with one swat, I could knock you out, old lady. But instead, she just jab, 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 day in, day out. Wherever he goes, go in the grocery store, jab, jab, getting gas, jab. Everything that he does, she's right there being persistent. And he says, enough, you're giving me a black eye. In other words, think about the imagery. The persistence of a poor widow that had nothing took down the Mike Tyson judge of the day. Why? Because of persistence. That's the power of persistence in prayer. So if the first verse is what we should do, pray always without stopping, verses 6 through 8 is why we should do that. Verse 6, then the Lord said, learn a lesson from this unjust judge. Even he rendered a just decision in the end. So don't you think God will surely give justice to his chosen people who cry out to him day and night? Will he keep putting them off? I tell you, he will grant them justice quickly. Here's the point. Jesus, again, not just uses the extreme of an unjust judge and a widow, he goes another extreme, and he says, you have to understand, God is not like the unjust judge. That is not God. And if this unjust judge can give justice in the end due to the woman's persistence, how much more will your Father, who loves you, who is full of mercy, who is full of compassion, who hears every time you whisper a prayer, who knows your thoughts even before you say them out loud, how much more will he give you justice when you pray? I mean, it's the other extreme. And Jesus is saying, if this guy, who is a pathetic excuse for a, quote, judge, if even he can get it right in the end, how much more will your perfect Father get it right for you in the end? I mean, it's powerful. It's as if that is to be the jab in our face, to wake us up, the dose of cold water to say, oh my goodness, you're right. If this wicked guy can get it, how much more will my Father, who is perfect, get it? God is not the unjust judge. He's the opposite. He is loving, gracious, good, merciful, and just. That is his character. That is his nature. He is always that way, eternally so. Here's the idea. If you know that God loves you, you can trust that he hears your prayers for help. If you really believe, I mean, so much of this comes down to, what do you really believe about God? What do you believe? The Bible can tell you all day long. Pastors can tell you all day long. But what do you really believe about God? Because if you really believe deep down in your gut, I know, I don't think about it, I don't wonder, I know he loves me. I know he loves me so much he would die for me, give up the beauty of heaven to have a relationship with me. I know he loves me. Then, oh my goodness, that should be gasoline on your prayer life, right? I mean, you don't go to God like this unjust judge, like, well, I don't know if he's in a good mood today or not. I don't know if he'll listen to me. He might be busy saving the world of famine. I don't know if he's got time for me. Then that tells me your view of God is very weak. But if you go to him knowing you didn't have to create, but you created me before the foundation of the world, before Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, when you said, let there be light, you knew I was going to be born, and you created me. And if that's not enough, you left the beauty of heaven to come to earth, to live as a poor person, to die the death of a criminal, and be resurrected 3 days later, and soon and very soon you're coming back to take me to be with you for eternity. Oh my goodness, if that's who you are, then man, I've got some boldness in my prayers. I've got some confidence in my prayers. I'm looking forward to praying. I don't just pray for 30 minutes every morning. I pray throughout the day because that's who I know God is. When you know who he is, it should radically shape your prayer life. We shouldn't beg you to pray. God shouldn't beg you to pray. You should be looking forward to it with excitement and with boldness and with power. That's the point of the parable. You pray. This is the whole thing. You pray based on God's character. Sometimes in life, I've had weak faith. And it's been hard to pray because my faith hasn't been as strong as I would like it to be in situations. So I remind myself, I am not praying based on the level of my faith. I'm praying based on the character of who I'm talking to. I don't pray based on, well, I got strong faith today. No. I got weak faith. Well, it's going to stop me. No. I pray based on who I know he is. I pray based on his character, which is why it's important to spend time with him. The more you spend time with him in prayer and studying the Bible, then the more you know about his character, his nature, his will, so that I'm praying based on confidence and boldness, not because of my emotional state, no, but because I know that I know who you are. You pray based on his character. In addition to that, your prayer life is directly related to your faith level. Here's what I mean. You're like, well, that's contradictory to what you just said. Well, listen. If you go and you pray for a year or 6 months or a couple of weeks about something, and then God didn't give you a yes or no, and you just quit, then lovingly it tells me that your level of faith in God is very weak. Because if you're willing to quit after just a little bit of prayer time, whether that's a year or a couple of years or 6 months or whatever, then it says that you really don't believe God can do it. On the opposite side, conversely, if you pray persistently, maybe for 20 years that some of your family give their life to Jesus, then that says, I know, God, you can do it. Their heart might be hard right now, but God, I know that you can do it. So that's why we persist in our prayers, because it's based on the character of God and what we know him to be. And let me say this as well, praying persistently, let me tell you what it is not. It is not, well, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. Every time we talk about prayer, I say that because I have a few pet peeves, and that is probably my biggest one. It just makes my skin crawl, blood boil, whatever you want to say, when I hear quote-unquote Christians say, well, if it's meant to be, it'll be. That's like saying I'm going to walk in this room and the lights are all off. Say, well, if the lights are meant to be on, they'll be on. I don't know. How, and let me just say this. I say this lovingly. I think it's a slap in the face to God. Because what you're actually saying is, I just don't know, God. If you're going to do it or not. And what you're saying is, I actually have more faith in luck or happenstance or chance than I do the one that created me. It's a slap in the face to him. No, better to say, God, I'm praying for this, and I'm believing that you're going to do it. Now, maybe it's something else that you're kind of on the fence about. Then you absolutely should pray. James chapter 5, we did that a few years ago, says that we should say, God, what is your will in this situation? But there's sometimes in life when I walk into a dark room, I don't have to pray, is it your will, Lord, that I share the gospel with these people? No, I know I am the light, and I got to flip some light switches on to help people know about Jesus, right? Now, if I'm praying about whether I need to switch jobs or move to a new house, well, then, yes, I'll pray, God, this is a great opportunity. I can make more money, and this will be better for my family. And God, this will be great. But, Lord, I pray for your will. God, what do you want? And don't just say, well, I prayed about it once. No. I'm going to pray persistently until I get it clear, yes, you need to take that job. Or no, don't take it. Stay where you're at. You pray persistently. Here's the big takeaway. You feed your faith through persistent prayer. Feed your faith through persistent prayer. Verse 8, Jesus ends it and says, but when the Son of Man, Jesus, returns to the earth, how many will he find on the earth who have faith? If Jesus was to return in this moment and do a snapshot of your life, of your spiritual life, of your faith, of your prayer life, what would he find just in this moment? Just capture it in this moment. Would he find that you quit and give up too easily in prayer? That you pray for a little while but doesn't go your way, or you just kind of get tired of it or whatever, and you quit? Is that the level of your faith that he would find? Or if he was to return in this moment, take a snapshot of your faith, your relationship with him, would he find that, oh my goodness, this person, you're like the widow. You don't give up. You keep praying by faith because you know my character. You know that I can do it. And man, I love you. What type of faith would he find in you in this moment if he were to return? We must strengthen our faith through persistent prayer while we're waiting for the return of Jesus. If you read just a little bit earlier, just the end of the chapter previous, Luke 17, that's what started it again. The disciples are, what will it be like when you return? And Jesus answers it, and he says, and also pray persistently until I return. Will he find a praying church, a praying family, a praying individual? What will he find when he returns? I pray that he would say, man, if there's one church in Yukon, it's that prays, that was birthed in prayer and never stops prayer. They put it even on the walls in the auditorium. It's Pathway Church. They're a praying church. That's why we even added at the end, we're big on it because Jesus is. What will he find in your home and in your family? You just pray, bless the meat, let's eat, or you pray over your kids every morning, every night on the way to school. You're praying when they're not even aware of it. I found this quote. I don't know who said it. I'd give him credit. It's not me, but it's a beautiful quote. Prayer feeds faith, lifts drooping hands, and strengthens weak knees. That's the power of prayer. But the greatest prayer of all is the prayer when you say, Jesus, I give my life to you. I receive and accept your forgiveness of my sins. That you'll never have a prayer greater than that. And I want to give you an opportunity to pray that right now. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the truth of your word. Jesus, we thank you for